No, I have not.
Going to the concert Saturday night there, maybe going to the Take the Tri-Cities. I like to go in there.
We have pretty much a homebody.
Yeah.
Groups and stuff, I tend to deter away from, unless it's the Mount Carmel block party.
Yeah, I wish we could have done that, but
Maybe next year.
the business stuff, they didn't have the money to give this year.
Maybe next year.
Yeah.
You guys have done a lot of things this year, you know.
I wrote too many news articles.
Too many articles, too many articles. But I don't work here all the time.
I don't mind to do that, but I don't know if I can bring it up. Well, I won't forget that. You've been the back burner, and I never do that.
Throw it backwards.
I've seen them.
It's not, I mean, they work just fine. Those are
Just like
better.
me, and I'll give it
Yeah,
my
that's
percentage. I'm not
It's not
one
like
for
space.
being
They grow to
spontaneous.
three.
Yeah.
I like to reason things out before I make commitments and. Once I make a commitment, I pretty much stick with it. Ask the military.
Melanoma?
Too soon, brother.
Well, I don't know how deep it is. They've already.
Thank you, Mr. Darby.
Yeah.
Honorable Mr. Darby, sir. I will, but this is a perfect time to say honorable.
Okay.
Outside of the meeting, I'll call you Mr. Darby, sir. Then I get to get a few years, I'll call you Darby.
Right on down. I'll be able to hear every word you say.
Eventually, it's just the way I am.
Yeah.
Fix that so you can.
We got Honorable McLean. Thank you for my hello. Please,
I mean, I know I got it.
sir. I said, Mr. Honorable Mr. Darby, Honorable Mr. McLean has been there a few years, so I even played, sir. But in here it's honorable. Right place, right time.
I'll call this meeting to order. Would we stand, please? For the prayer. Everybody bow your heads. Lord, we thank you for tonight. We thank you for the people that have come tonight. We thank you for this board. Lord, we thank you for the many blessings you've given us that we take from granted for each day. We thank you for our town and the improvement that it's made over the past few years. We ask that you'll be with us and help us to make the right directions, Lord, the right choices. And Lord, be with us throughout the remainder of this meeting and take us all home safely. All these things we ask in the name of our Father, Jesus, our Son, your Son, and our Savior. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag.
Turn around.
Who did I ask? I was asking somebody. Who did I ask back there? Okay, right there. I was looking to see who I asked.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I couldn't remember, I asked so many. Roll call, please.
Alderman Mindy Fleshauer.
Here.
Alderman John Gibson.
Here.
Alderman Jim Gillen.
Here.
Alderman Stephen McLean.
Here.
Alderman Darby Patrick.
Here.
Vice Mayor Teresa Mott.
Here.
Mayor Pat Stillwell.
Pat, here.
All are present.
Okay, I want to welcome everybody tonight and thank you for coming because without you all coming, we need as many people here to listen what goes on at these meetings that we can get here and they will know what's going on. So I want to welcome you all. Okay, the approve and the corrections of the minutes of the board and the Alderman meeting dated June the 24th, 2021, and the committee and department records.
I make a motion to accept them.
I have favor say yes?
Yes.
Anybody say no? I'll see. The approval of the monthly financial report, you've got that this week and read it. Do I, hear a motion?
I make a motion to approve.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, all in favor, say aye. Okay. Okay, the visitors' comments, all persons wishing to address the board shall stand and state your name and your address and shall be limited to 3 minutes. I'm gonna get this right in the presentation. The board may not participate in the discussion and cannot vote for the subject you present. Absent and an emergency, and the earliest time the board might discuss this is that, will be the next board meeting. Individuals or group representatives, who place something on the agenda tonight will be allowed to make a brief comment when that agenda item is open for discussion. We don't have any old business, so we'll move to the new business.
Do we have any visitors comments?
Oh.
Do we have visitors
yeah.
comments?
Do we have any visitors' comments?
My name is Garrett White, 421 Old Hickory Circle. As you go up Independence, go around the curve, it's near where the new gym is. There's always a pile of trash piled up there. And this has gone on for the better part of a year. I understand when they were building the gym that there'd be some debris and stuff and they'd be picked up. But now, when the brush trash truck goes by and picks it up, within a day or two, it starts accumulating again. And that's not what the brush truck was designed for.
Exactly.
And that's not what we need it for. So I'd like for somebody to look into this and see what can be done about it. Thank you.
Thank you. That's a good one to come up with.
I'd like to add something to what he said. If you travel that road, you know when you come around that circle, Garrett, how many people are in the middle of the road, aren't they? Do you have that happen to you? Yes, I do too. Every one of us that travels Independence. I wish they could put some of those little yellow things that makes a racket in the middle of the road where the rest of us, people that start to cross over, especially the trucks that have those mirrors out to here and they're in the middle of the road, they know they're on the wrong side of the road.
Okay, I'll make a comment on that one. We have got a grant, and we're at the mercy of the TDOT. Right, Mike?
Yeah, they should be starting that any day.
Okay, and they're going to put those in the road and on the sides and paint. Am I correct on this? Well, that was the last time. Who knows? We'll wait to see what they're doing. But anyway, Independence and Hammond both will be done. And so, of course, we was told it'd be in the spring, but you know how that goes. You're at their mercy, and so that it's supposed to be. So, and yes, I understand what you're talking about because the same thing is happening up through here. And so okay. Any other? Oh, I'm sorry.
Nothing we sorry about, Mayor. Ain't a big deal.
I've got another one back here too. Go ahead.
Well, they may have been first.
No, I don't know. Just go ahead.
Well, Honorable Mr. Darby, Honorable Mr. McLean, Honorable Mr. Gibson, Honorable Miss Mock, Honorable Mayor Stillwell, Honorable Miss Fleshire, Honorable Gillum, Honorable Mr. Peavy, and Honorable Mr. Housewright. Thank you for 3 minutes of your time to allow me to say things. When I do, I want the board to know I ain't talking to one individual, but I'm talking to the board for this, that, if it's a thank you, or if it's something I'd like to be done. I maybe look at one person, but I'm discussing to everybody. It's disrespectful not to, so I wanted to iterate that right off the bat. And with that, I'd like to thank Honorable Mr. Gillum for filling the chug hole on the street there. And there's a lot of people, if you notice that chug hole, a lot of tread marks where it's been going down, where a lot of trucks has been going through. Thank you, Honorable Alderman Gillum, very much. I know not just one person, it takes a team, so I'm saying thank you to all. Though Honorable Mr. Gillum said he would look into it personally, so I'm saying thank you, but not personally. Takes a team, one representative represents us all there as a whole, for a community. Don't wanna be long-winded, but I thank you for that, and also, if it's possible, you know that sidewalk above that check hole that protrudes out where those big trucks go, that nearly clip you when you go by, since I live right there at the intersection of Gillum. If you know that old boy pretty good, I appreciate maybe if the town could remove that sidewalk, because it's, the big trucks got those $1,000 tires go over, because they want to splash their tires on that sidewalk projection. And you probably already know what I'm talking about there from there, but if you go by it, honorable committee, honorable board members, once or twice, I appreciate it. Maybe you might could do something with that, honorable Mayor Stillwell, I appreciate it. And also, not to be too long-winded, but the traffic light, where somebody took something that wasn't broken and fixed it. Now there's like 15 cars lined up before you can make a left to get out to the interstate where they prolong things. Honorable Mayor Stillwell, if you could talk to DOT or however that's done, I don't know if things can be changed, but I would sure appreciate your input and the honorable board's input. Mr. Housewright, Mr. Phoebe, thank you.
Thank you. You can have the floor now.
You didn't get an honor.
Claude Lawson, 441 Mimosa Street. I need some information without pay. So therefore you don't have to run this through TV. I'd like to know the fella that was driving the fire truck had the city limits out on the river, and it was wrecked out there. I'd like to know where he was employed by this town, or was he working for the fire department or what? Now, employee, you gotta be on the payroll. For instance, if he works for the town, he's not employed, so he's not on the payroll. If he did, you can lower that pencil down to him. I learned that. I worked for the town of Mount Carmel for a few years, and I wasn't even allowed to drive a pickup truck. Now, if he drove that fire truck out there out of the city limits, who give him that permission to do that? I'd like to get this back. Surely by the time we have another meeting here, whether or not I'll be here or not, you can give it to me verbally or in writing. I don't care. I prefer writing. You don't have to put up with it. Thank you, Mayor.
You will, Mr. Dawson. The board, please turn your mics on if they're not on. Anybody else have anything to say? If not, we'll move on. The new business, we don't have any old business. So the new business, the discussion of the Sunshine Law, form of government and employees treatment.
So, it's come to my attention that there was a meeting held by more than one board member outside of the public. And I'm not trying to harp on this issue, but we just can't do that. And
let me interrupt you. We
well,
went through
hold
this.
on, just 1 second.
Okay.
The law is just really clear that even if you call it a fact-finding meeting, you still have to announce it to the public and let the public know that it's going to occur. And it should also be, positive to the whole board that they could attend. I don't want the town to get in trouble for an open meetings violation, because eventually, if we continue to not follow the law and hold unlawful meetings, it's going to happen. And And that's my fear, because I would hate for the town to take some action that then becomes invalidated based on that fact.
This is from MTAS. We've gone through this before, and I talked to an MTAS lawyer who said I was not guilty of any wrongdoing. Here we go once again.
You
Now, there's
cannot
more-
hold
this is-
meetings outside the
I
public.
didn't hold a meeting. I went
If two aldermen go somewhere, it's called a
It's
meeting.
been considered
No,
as a
it
meeting.
says, meeting does not include any on-site inspection or any project or program not gathering information for the purpose of fact-finding. We went up
But you
there-
have to notify the public that you're gonna have this on-site inspection or fact-finding expedition.
It's done all the time, and that's exempt from it. That's
Oh,
just like
well,
us
I
going to
want-
look at the structure of a building. If it's brought to our attention, we can go.
You should not attend as a group.
Let me ask who all went to look at the dog
It's
shelter.
exempt
I wasn't
from it. Any
invited.
property that you inspect as a group here is exempt from the sunshine law. You cannot discuss what you're voting on or try to persuade a vote.
You can't talk about it. You couldn't have any discussion on it amongst the board members if it's a matter of public concern.
Well, I've got a lot to add here.
That's
But
fine.
Anyway, we went to, Brenda Parker came to the office and talked to me at Lynn. She was very upset. Now, this is a letter that was sent to the one
Well, she
that,
shouldn't have ever come to your office.
well, that's
anyway.
neither here nor there. I have a lot, you'd be surprised what we have to listen to from the public. Anyway, I was given a copy of a letter that was sent to one of the aldermen here. Cheryl Parker died October 2020. He was very sick the last few months of his life, and his wife Brenda was his caregiver, along with some help from their son. The last few weeks, Cheryl was also seen by hospice nurses. At this time, there was a bear coming around their house. Their son took the trash home with him, so there was nothing to put in trash cans. They would hear it and smell it at night. Now, I don't know how many of you all know, my stepmother worked in Gatlinburg, and she would walk home at night, and the men told her that she worked with, if she smelled something really stinky, like bad trash, rotting trash, that was a bear, and she needed to get somewhere. So this is true about smelling it, for us that can smell. They called the TWRA, and they offered to give them a gun and some rubber bullets. The hospice people were very nervous when they had to come after dark. This is where Mr. Housewright comes into play. A woman named Emily works in the office with Housewright. She complained to him that the street light near her house was bothering her by shining in her window. She lives across the street from the Parkers. So without saying anything to Cheryl and Brenda, Mr. Housewright has the power company come and remove the light from the street. Cheryl Parker had the pole and the light put up years ago and paid the monthly charge. When another mayor was here, he said that wasn't fair for them to pay for the street light and had the charge for the light put under the city. You can see why Brenda Parker was very upset to find out why it was taken down and was told because it bothered Emily. Brenda asked him to have it put back because it was much needed with people coming and going at different times, and they were all afraid of the bear or bears. He told her no, it would not be put back. She told him she would pay the bill just to get it back. He told her he would not help her. She told him that Cheryl was dying and about the bear being closed. He told her, I'm losing my place here. He told her he knew about the bear and that Cheryl had hospice coming to the house, but the light would not be put back. Brenda called the power company to get a light. Brenda called the power company to get a light that she would pay for, and they said it would be a couple of weeks before they would get it back up. When she told them what was happening, they had the light back up in about 2 hours. Of course, Brenda's paying the charge for it now. What kind of city manager would do that to an elderly couple at such a traumatic time? By the way, the man from the power company told Brenda that the light was not shining in Emily's window, and he took pictures before removing it. Some of this other stuff I don't really want to say. Also, Emily told Mrs. Parker that she had gone through the city files looking for receipts on building permit for a brick wall the Parkers had built in front of their house. She told Brenda they did not get a permit and she would see that the wall was torn down. Is it lawful for an employee to be going through files of citizens? Now, this wasn't the end of this. The lady called me again, and she was upset because a, curb had been put in front of Emily Wood's house. She was concerned that the water flow would shift from that side of the road over to her house and start to undermine the, dirt that supports her big wall, and it is a large brick wall. So, I asked Darby if he wanted to go with me to go look at this little piece of curbing. It's not very large, but I was told that there were caves behind her property, somewhere over in this neighborhood. Now, I don't know a whole lot, but I'm thinking that if there is a cave somewhere behind her property, that the water flow naturally goes toward those caves. I don't know. That's what, I think that's how you get caves to begin with, is the water erodes, goes and settles and keeps eroding. I'm not qualified to say for sure, but my husband, he went with me, he says, I don't think it's going to be an issue, but with no rain, it doesn't want to rain in Mount Carmel for some reason. I don't think we're ever going to know the answer until we have a really good rain once again, maybe in the winter. I think maybe it'll start raining in the winter, I hope. We need some water, but this is how this came about. There was no deliberation, no big secret. This was a lady who feels she's being mistreated by our city administrator.
I
Well,
guess.
let
I
me
felt like I
add-
had
let me
no
add-
choice,
Hold
I
on.
felt like I had no choice but to go, I'm not gonna, we are elected to represent the people.
I understand that.
Well,
I understand.
well,
Well,
well-
hold, just, here's my concern. A citizen brought a concern to you.
Yes,
It is a matter of public concern. It is literally her request that the board do something about this.
that's why she called me.
Well, if you're meeting about something that may come before the board for consideration, that is the problem. Because if you, I know you didn't have any deliberation. That's not the point. Had you, had you talked about the curve with Alderman Patrick out there, and then it later came before the board, and the board takes action, we could get in trouble for that. Because the meeting occurred without notice. And I understand that you can have site inspections for ongoing projects or programs. That's what the law states. This isn't a project or a program of the town. And so, I guess the law, unfortunately, in this, I don't necessarily agree that this is that big a deal. But eventually it may be. And the last thing I want to have happen is the town to get dinged or drawn into court over something that could have been avoided.
Well, let me ask you this, how should I have handled this differently?
Well, I can answer
You could have
that.
brought it before the board at this meeting.
Us as a board, our job is to make policies. When something like this comes up, we need to turn it over to the supervisor, which would have been Jason here. Then Jason then in returns goes to Mike and they settle this.
But-
That, not us, and especially as a group.
That's still, I mean, I understand your concern though. Your point is that,
That she had already come to my
is that,
house, right?
your point is that you didn't have faith in the system to do what you think it should do. So my alternative would be to place it on the agenda. And then we can discuss it here. And then if there needs to be, a visit out there, the board can go collectively to gather information. It can be noticed to the public, and then we eliminate that concern. So it's not necessarily that anything was wrong that was done, but it's just a proceed, and I understand that it may be elevating form over substance in terms of the law, but sometimes the law just does that.
Well, let me ask a question here.
Okay.
When you went to look at the animal shelter, who exactly went with you?
I was there with Mike and Kenny when I went.
So no other alderman went with you?
Not
I went
Mike
on my
Kenny.
own.
I went with Mike and Kenny. We all had separate appointments, but they was there when I was there. Then when I left, I think, John went by a couple hours later there.
Yeah, you went like at noon, and I left at 1.
But, yeah, them two was the only one, and I think the woman who worked there was already time, just took them 3.
And was that at Pet Works? Is that what we're talking
No.
about?
We have that at the
But
shelter
we
once.
had discussed that in the meeting though, hadn't we? The people were gonna go, no? Okay, well, if they went separately, I guess it doesn't matter. But like the Pet Works is a good example. We talked about it and then everybody was able to go collectively because it had been noticed.
Well,
And it's purely procedural in nature, is my concern. Because that's just the way that the court's gonna look at it, potentially.
So are
Well,
you
and I
saying
have-
that I could never have went to her house by
No,
myself?
you could have gone by yourself. It's not, if you had gone separately and then Alderman Patrick had gone, everybody could have gone individually. The concern is more than one alderman, because that's where the law places its
it
concern,
keeps us out of being,
because it wants to eliminate the possibility that deliberation towards any sort of public decision could happen outside of the public. You would be totally free to go by yourself.
If we have a issue that we need to look at something,
Yeah.
say if tonight we decide we need to go look at something tomorrow or after the meeting, as long as it's publicized in here.
And then you don't deliberate in any way towards it, I think that it should be okay.
So roughly we would have every 2 weeks with our workshop, if something needed to.
You could announce that I think the board needs to go look at X. You know, you couldn't vote on it obviously because it'd be in the
Right.
workshop, but that would be a great
Just
forum.
like a citizen wanted all of us or whatever to come and look at something.
That'd be a great forum to announce that. I
No
agree.
more than 2 weeks, roughly, than we can do.
see, when I get calls, I always call the supervisor. I've called Kenny probably 10 times this month already. Then I've called Jason, and I'll leave it up to them because, in other words, I want them to get fussed at, not me, I guess. But no, but they are the supervisors, and so therefore they can handle it more than we can handle it, and by all means not take anybody with us.
Well,
So I'm not trying to
It's
come
not
down.
that I'm just
I'm really
Oh, I
not.
know you're not. I'm just saying that.
I understand, and I hope that I've cleared it up
Yeah.
a little more.
And you're used to in the past.
Well, let
doing
me
what you need
let
to
me
do.
bring this up. She said that she would go to the supervisor of the department. Mike Housewright told them they couldn't talk to me at the sewer plant, didn't they, Mr. Peavy? And you said, and I called really and said,
no, let's back up. Let's back up. What I said to Mr. Cox was, because you were asking certain questions. You were asking a lot of questions that frankly should have been directed at me. And what I did was I advised Mr. Cox that if you had questions, that you should come talk to me.
the questions I asked were what we had over there, like the filters.
But
To me, and I talked to you about that, I said I wanted to talk to somebody about it who knew what they were talking about. You don't operate a sewer plant. I don't operate a sewer plant. The people who work there were the ones who could explain the process and the parts. That's what I was asking questions about.
Well, and Vice Mayor, there's a couple of things here. Without diving too deep into the sewer plant, with the exception of Mr. Hellstrom here, I don't think there's anybody in this room right now that knows more about the sewer plant than I do.
You was up there, how long? Last week, a whole week, wasn't you? Or a week before last?
A while, but there needs to be lines of communication between, if you have questions about operations, the person to fill those questions is the city manager. Now, we've gotten sidetracked over onto the sewer plant. You said that you had invited Darby to go out there, or Alderman Patrick. What board members did you invite to go out?
I asked John, he was the one that had Well, I'll just say, he's the one who received the letter to begin with, so I thought he might be a little bit more familiar with the situation.
Okay.
He did know about the light. He
Right.
said he thought there was no problem there. The light's back.
Well, was there another board member that you asked?
I asked Jim, I thought he might go, but he didn't wanna go, John didn't wanna go.
Why not ask all board members? If this is
Well, I thought Stephen might be working and be busy, I didn't think Pat would go, or
And I was
Mindy, I
tied
didn't
up.
think they'd go.
Well, there's a few
Well, I
things,
wouldn't have
there's a
went.
few things at play here. There again, you know, wastewater, you know, with Mr. Pishner, not being in the room, or not wastewater, but, stormwater. I am the most knowledgeable person in this room right now on stormwater. If you receive a complaint from someone, regarding stormwater, I would again implore you, to have a discussion with me. There's a few things, several things at play. One, you stated that you'd received numerous, or at least a couple complaints, about Miss Wood. Did you make any attempt to speak to her about it?
No, it wasn't against her, it was against you.
Well, no, you said specifically that
Oh, in this
you had
letter?
you had received, in your communication with Alderman setting up this meeting, that you had received 2 prior complaints against Emily.
No,
Well,
really.
was there at any time a thought that perhaps you should maybe talk to the employee or talk to her supervisor before going to her house on a Saturday morning?
All I did was go stand in the road till her daddy came out, which I thought was unusual, that he appeared to be waiting for us. And he talked to us and asked if we were aldermen. I said yes, and I said, we come to look at this little curve, and he said, who complained? I said, I can't tell you that. I said, I've heard there's a cave. Can we look to see if there's a cave here? And he walked with us to the backyard and talked
So
to us.
you asked to go onto her property?
Yes, he asked us to.
It's not his property.
Well, the
It's
daddy
employee.
came out. Daddy
Because she
came out.
was
and talked to us.
Why would you go to an employee's
She
house?
was gone.
I didn't
I-
go to her house, Mike. I
You
went
were
to the
standing in
road.
the road in front of her house.
Yes, I can do that.
Yes, you can, but should you?
Why shouldn't I? I had a complaint from one of these people.
Why wouldn't you talk to the employee?
Pardon?
Why wouldn't you talk to an employee?
Why would I? Because you told me you didn't want me talking to employees at one time. Didn't you, Mike? Didn't you, Mike?
Vice Mayor, if you will talk to anybody that works for this city rather than calling private meetings, I would be thrilled.
Well, the employees, and I'm not gonna mention those names for sure, they told us they were afraid to talk to the alderman because of you. Yes, they did,
No.
Pat. I won't tell you who they were.
Hey, I got a question on this. Why wasn't the board notified if they was going to do something for a town employee, like putting a curb down through there? Maybe they should have brought that up, so we're gonna curb that down through there.
Why would we?
How many of
Why
us,
would
we don't
they?
ever anybody
We-
else?
In the past 4 years, we put
It
12
don't look,
such.
it don't look the best.
No, it doesn't look the best when we have board members that show up in front of an employee's house. This was,
Also in the middle of the street, it ain't nothing to you or them.
I would beg to differ. If I look out my front window or my front door on a Saturday morning and I see board members in the street in front of my house, yes. And while we're talking about that, I so don't want to say this publicly, but apparently I'm going to have to. Not everybody wants to come work at the town of Mount Carmel. I'm sorry to say that recruiting quality employees is difficult.
Because we have meetings like this.
Well, it doesn't help when you have board members getting in the middle of a neighborly dispute and showing up at an employee's house. I would not blame Miss Wood if she walked into the office and said, you know what? I am sick of this. It is completely unacceptable behavior to have board members coming to her home.
And it's not unusual, it's
She's
happened
not just
before.
she's not just a board member, or she's not just an employee, she's a taxpayer.
And
Now, we,
former board members.
and former board members. This is nothing more than a neighborly dispute. And had the workforce, me or Emily, been contacted, been given the general courtesy of letting us know what would happen, we could explain that. A case in point, and I'm sorry, Alderman Gibson, to bring you into this. You raised a question with Alderman Gibson. He had questions. Could you explain the course of action?
Kind of what happened with that, I did get that email that you read, and I brought that to the city manager and asked for him to elaborate on it. He told me what I needed to know about it, didn't think anything was there, didn't action any further. And then when it came to going to look at the asphalt, as soon as I figured out what was going on, I picked up the phone and asked if this was, for one, going to violate the sunshine law. That's the first question I believe I asked you. And then second was, what's going on with that? Can you explain it to me? And do we have examples of other people doing it before? And I believe you said 14 or so?
At least a dozen.
At least a dozen. And that was the end of it. I drove up there and saw it myself one day. Didn't even drive down the street, but I could see it from the road. You know, it's this much asphalt to grow above the ground. It's really something that should be much out, not even on our level of getting this much attention.
But it is from that lady because she feels like she's being discriminated against.
Emily could say the same thing.
Well, no, nothing, Mrs. Parker's not having anything done to her house by the town, other than to take the request that the light be taken away.
Well, Emily could
But
bring a
Vice
charge
Mayor-
of harassment
But
too
Vice
on
Mayor,
that.
you-
But I'd say she can too.
Yeah.
Vice
They
Mayor,
can't.
this, and I don't want to further this discussion and take us deeper down this road, but I guess I'm going to. Ms. Parker has lodged numerous complaints against myself and Emily, going back well before Emily ever worked here. It is a neighborly dispute. What you have effectively done is taken a neighborly dispute involving a town employee and elevated it to the level of a public meeting.
No,
And
I
all of-
didn't, Mike, you did. You could have talked to me about it behind closed doors.
You didn't. I didn't know
could have.
anything. I didn't know about it until you were setting up a
We
meeting.
postpone this to workshop,
No.
because it's nothing we can vote on.
Yeah, I think we're in the
We can sit
weeds.
here and argue this all night, and not get nowhere, and if
Yeah.
there's not a
As a
official
matter
complaint of the sunshine law, we're just sitting here, but.
Yeah, I think that I've addressed my point.
Well, I would like to say as a matter of common courtesy, somebody should have talked to that lady.
I have spoken with her.
You told her you were gonna take the light down before you did it? No.
Look,
What about the
look.
curbing? Well, we'll
Does-
just forget it. We'll
well,
just forget it.
I'm sorry, I
The
cannot.
best thing
I
to do
cannot.
is not get two people together and go see somebody, cause that would be considered as a meeting.
Make a motion to postpone this to workshop, and we'll discuss it then.
We got a motion on the floor.
I made the second.
We got a second. We vote. All in
Yes.
favor? Opposed? All right.
The next one is up for discussion and acceptance of Vaughn and Melton wastewater report and phase 1 project proposal. If you'd come, please.
Hi.
Or always sit down right there.
Here we go. Great move. I want to thank the Mayor and Alderman for the opportunity to present the report. I don't think everybody's had an opportunity to read just this little piece of.
I
Yeah.
have skimmed through a good quite a bit, and this is a really good report. I
Yeah.
wanna thank you for
Give me
that.
10 or 12 months, I'll get to it.
I understand. What I'm gonna
There's a lot of
say is
information
if
in
we.
here too, some good information.
Yeah, if you just really look at section 1, the facility plan summary, I think that is going to be probably the 10,000-foot view of what we are looking at for the town of Mount Carmel. As you are aware, everybody that's sitting in this room wasn't the people that have put the city in the situation that you are. And what you have to do is look at yourselves as how are we going to move the city from a reactionary to a proactive system moving forward, should that be what you want to do. And I think most communities now are in that form of making this proactive versus reactionary. Now, there are going to be times in which you may have to do reactionary things, but as long as you're planning and have a plan on what needs to be done at the facility. First of all, we'll kind of go into the collection system, and what the collection system is as far as, and this is page 1, hopefully.
Yes, it is.
And what it is from the house to the plant is the collection system. So it is, you know, if you have a grinder pump, it's going to the grinder pump and pumping to the force main, which the force main will bring it to the plant. Or if you're on a gravity type system, it's your service lateral going to the main that eventually goes to the pump station. So that is your collection system. Short term is you have a mixed system with gravity and low pressure sewer. And those types of systems are, you know, especially the grinders, take a lot of maintenance, and I think you guys are experiencing that quite a bit right now due to the age of the system. If you look at this, the plant was built in 1985, and there's a couple things that you should be, one, I think if you look at it, is the plant itself, capacity-wise, is still in great shape. The plant was designed for like a 0.482 million gallons per day, and you're currently at, on average, about a 0.28 million gallons per day. So you're sitting in good shape as far as capacity of that. Performance-wise,
You saw that max was?
I think it was 0.482.
0.472.
0.472.
And we're at 2.
Yeah, and I think on average, we have, I think it's like around 0.28, give or take. So when we look at that capacity-wise for good, performance-wise, overall, you know, the plant is doing really well. There are some things that we're gonna find some deficiency in the plant that, you know, the primary clarifiers are not operational as designed. There's a secondary clarifier that is not operational. The other thing that we believe needs to be kind of as part of the first things is a mechanical screen to get a lot of the debris and solids that won't get treated in the plant itself out of the stream as quickly as possible. And that would be a mechanical screen and compactor. The pump stations, there are, I believe we have 11 pump stations, and with that, they're in various stages of need immediate attention to, over time, you will need to take things in place, those repairs on that. Some of the pump stations themselves are at or above capacity, and you know, part of that is it may be some of the force mains are undersized, and the flows coming into some of those areas need to get taken care of.
Now, the two that you said that were at capacity, the pump station 10, which is Sunrise Meadows, and then the other one on Independence.
Yep.
The second one that's on Independence over there where Meadow Springs is, that one's not looking to go to be fixed or whatever until replaced until your phase 2 for
Yep.
10. If it was physically, financially possible, could we move that up to phase 1?
Well, certainly, I mean,
Because it's at capacity, because I know one of them, it was like 600 and 600. I think it's, I'll have to go back and look capacity wise. Cause it showed what the capacity was for Sunrise Meadows and what it was at, and then it showed what the capacity was for the one down here.
Lucky.
And if I can,
It's on page 33.
and I apologize, if I can kind of divert us from the technical for just a second.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Return to, I spoke with, Mr. Hellstrom and I have discussed this. Phase one, which I think was originally estimated at 4.4 million, I believe,
4.4 million.
has been broken down into two parts. And there's a few reasons for that. We'll call what we're going to be looking at phase 1A and phase 1B. The phase 1A is what we're looking at, about 1.7 million. One of the things that we're going to do, starting immediately, and we're actually going to be asking the board, if I remember correctly, for authorization to do this, is go ahead and authorize Bonnie Mountain to apply to get us into the state revolving loan fund. That is a good source of low interest dollars if we can qualify and if we can get loans through that. The opportunity that we've got here is with phase 1A. I feel like we can do that. We're liquid enough that we can do that and pay for it outright with federal dollars that's coming our way, as well as with some retained earnings. One of the things that, and Mr. Elstrom, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm kind of parroting you here. State revolving loan fund tends to look favorably on projects like pump station repairs and upgrades.
And the wastewater treatment plant. What the state likes to do with those dollars is if there is a community out there that, you guys are.
Like us.
Like you, there's other communities that I'm working for that the plants themselves may have been neglected for periods of time, and you may get notice of violations that we have discussed in the past. When you have those types of notice of violations, those sometimes allow you to score extra points, which gets you to closer to the top of the funding range within these programs that are out there. So my goal tomorrow is to have the conversations and come back to you within a week or so of where you would kind of stance at. One of the things that where we're at on this is the typical funding cycle is that we send in a letter of request and then fill out some questionnaires in January and February. They come back and then rank all of the various programs, and then there's a list that comes out typically August, September of where you score. So you're kind of sitting there, well, we're not in the right area. Well, kind of we are, because if we look at where we're at right now, we would not, we're 6 months out before we would even consider bidding this project. So there's some design time in there. So you would make that funding cycle, and depending upon where we would fit, we might be able to get some additional funding for the project, or we just move forward and wait to phase B, part B. In addition to this facility plan is projecting it out 20 years. We're going to try to identify these programs with the state and saying, hey, we want to do this in this year, we want to come back maybe 5 years later and do this other program, so that you're sitting in a place that they're not forgetting about you, and that there's potential dollars out there for you. And it may not always be, we're going to try to see if you would qualify for principal forgiveness loans and stuff like that. They're available. However, those are mostly for the really economically depressed areas within the state. So you may not qualify that, but you may qualify for below standard rates as far as interest go on potential loans.
Is there not like, I know we had talked about USDA grants, that could possibly be out there with the new census
I
that came
think,
out?
well, depends on where your median household income level went. If it stayed the same, probably not. If it went down significantly, that would be more beneficial, in those programs. The other thing that helps in some of these is because you guys are pretty solvent right now, where you have really virtually no debt on the wastewater, that kind of goes against some of the programs that are out there, is that you're sitting in too good of a condition that there's not help for you, unfortunately, other than low interest loans. Unless there's, if something pops up. And the other thing too is back, when President Obama first took office, there was a set of programs called the ERA grant programs that had shovel-ready projects, they were called. One of the programs that I had is I had a community that was looking, this was back in Minnesota, mind you, but they were doing a regionalization project. And it happened, I mean, I don't know how it happened, but it just, everything lined up. And they ended up getting, of a $1.8 million project, they got a $1.5 million grant. I feel that potentially, with as much talk as there are for infrastructures, if you're in a position where you may have shovel-ready projects, you might just happen to hit something, hit the wave at the right time, and get something, because they're going to want to get some of these programs out there for the communities. And there are these dollars that are coming out from the feds right now, and I think you're on for how much? 1.45 million. And the other thing too is the city's in pretty good situation with your finances, in that you have been putting money aside the last 10 years on that fund, sitting pretty healthy, which is great. So you can take care of some of these problems that TDEC has been trying to patiently for the last 3 to 5 years to get you to push you over the edge to, take care of the screening, take care of some of the other headworks projects, do a system map that are important, and some piping at the plant. As we move into the second phase, it's going to be try to get that secondary clarifier taken care of. As part of this first program too is also the cleaning of the primary clarifiers. If you've been out there, it's kind of nasty.
Another reason that we're taking the approach that we are, breaking phase 1 into 2 parts, 1A and 1B. Obviously, $4.4 million project we could not fund at this time. We would have to take on debt. In conversations with Kingsport, those conversations are still ongoing. They are still very friendly, but the likelihood of regionalization it's looking less likely. I feel like if we were to take on debt, because we have very little now, 300 plus. If we were to take on more debt, that takes regionalization off the table. So I think that phase 1A is, I've described it as a small and significant step towards where we need to be. It identifies and addresses some major deficiencies. We can start to move to execute that pretty quickly, and while we're executing that, we start mapping the path for 1B. In addition to that, Mr. Elstrom, interest rates are great right now. You know, there's opportunity that we could get an extremely low interest rate while we're executing 1A that allows us to put the things in place. To
Now,
look at
phase 1A
financing.
would be what gets us out of the violations.
Mostly, we're still gonna have some,
The main ones like the screens and.
the screen at the headworks, things of that nature. We'll be following up, I think, as quickly as possible with 1B. As soon as we can make, you know, a smart financial, decision on how to execute. Likewise, you know, that gives us an opportunity to look at funding, and my general thought is, you know, in 18 months, when we start looking at going forward with 1B, 18, it's a spitball timeline, but 18 months, 2 years, we're looking at 1B. Then, you know, if we can score a sub 1% financing deal or loan note on this project, it's conceivable that we would want to fold 1B in with 2 and bite off a bigger chunk at that time. So I think that we've got a lot of work to do, and I think that you know, jumping in at 1A allows us to start work while we're mapping the rest of the course with this, and especially in line with, you know, increased federal funding and federal aid coming forward on projects like this.
The Sunrise Meadows is in part of 1A, phase 1A, right?
I think it's 1B.
The Sunrise.
Independence was. Sunrise Meadows was in phase 1. Phase 2 was the lift station 6. That one.
Right.
Independence is in 3.
Well, there's a couple of them on Independence. The 6 is in 2.
But correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Elstrom.
No, what you said is correct, I'm trying to.
I believe the Sunrise Meadow lift station project would fall under 1B rather than 1A.
Even though it states it's in poor condition and it's over capacity.
Because 1A.
One is we can look, I'm sorry to cut you off.
Yeah.
One is, we were kind of identified as, hey, we want, what can we get to be, you know, projects under a certain value of the project. It's not something, if I will talk to my technical expert and say, hey, what if we looked at this as maybe a bid alternate? Let's say prices came in better, we could look at also making that improvement too, is having that on that one.
Anybody else have anything to say or ask? Questions?
It's too early in the game.
Okay, do it. All right. Discussion
Well,
and.
we gotta-
let's not move on yet.
I was gonna bring it to a vote. Not yet.
Are there, maybe we need to, is there, and again, I thought you guys may have had this a little bit, and if we could, you know, kind of go in this, so. The recommended plan is, as you're saying, is the wastewater treatment improvements at phase 1 was the original Sunrise Metal force main replacement, residential grinder center replacements, lift station 10, replacement and improvements and, provide the sewer mapping. Of that, we've kind of taken a couple of those out of there. But we certainly can look at, you know, the bidding market as of right now today. Things are,
I believe it. I know.
it's just like, I think going into this and saying, hey, spring of next year, we're bidding this kind of deal, I think you're gonna be in a much more better position where there's not supply chain issues still. I mean, where you are, on another project that I'm on, we can't get grinder pump basins at this stage. I mean, they've been ordered 10 months ago, and they still haven't shown up, so that's just the basin pumps and stuff like that are just as bad, if not worse. So I think going into the design stage at this stage, and then getting yourself into the financial program associated with this state revolving fund, I think that's where you're gonna be in a good position, and then we can look at what those additional pump stations are and seeing if we can't include them as bid alternates.
That one just makes me nervous, that's all the reason why I keep bringing it up.
Yeah.
And that comes back to, and, you know, in discussion that we have identified the 1.7, 1.8 bid capacity for that, and you know, keep in mind that, you know, on a project of this nature, with the market being as volatile as it is, we're looking at a project that bids could come in at $2 million.
Oh, yeah.
I believe is my understanding. So, you know, I don't want anybody to have sticker shock. But, you know, this is a project that we can break off and execute with the resources we have in hand. I think going forward with that, absent, you know, let's say absent any additional federal funds or state funds for wastewater infrastructure coming forward, and that's, you know, there seems to be a lot of look at the state and federal level for wastewater and water infrastructure expansion and rehabilitation, and I certainly hope that will continue. But if those funds were to evaporate going forward, we are probably looking at financing those operations.
And if we go through with the state revolving fund recommendation of applying, I will see if we can't. At sometimes they will allow somebody to jump in on the program too, and we'll do all that we can to push for that.
So that's essentially what you're looking for tonight, is just to, really, we're just looking to get the vote in motion, or the vote in, to kind of slowly get this long-term plan in motion. I mean, it's not going to be something that is going to take, you know, years to do, 2 years to do, but tonight we're essentially looking for the vote to authorize to sign into this funding agreement, or to
Start the process.
revolving loan.
Start the process.
Yeah, and just kind of the first in many of getting this process started.
Yep. Ideally, I mean, if you feel comfortable about moving forward with the phase 1A, where we are doing the headworks, the anoxide basin, and the system map, we would, like to get authorization on that. But if you want to hold off on that and give yourselves time to review the report, we certainly can and come back. But for sure, we would like to get moving on the application.
But we're still setting pretty good on the federal money, right?
Yes, I mean, as far as money wise, the town has the capacity to pay for phase 1A at this time without any additional funds.
Well, and my recommendation, I would ask, I'll communicate this, TDEC has been given a copy of this. I think staff recommendation, is, that, I would ask for a motion, to authorize going, forward with, going forward with the state revolving loan, trying to join that. Additionally, I would ask for a motion, to go ahead and give them the nod to go ahead with 1A. The items in 1A as well as 1B are all things that we're gonna have to do.
Just to get in compliance.
Just to move into compliance. So I would go ahead, my recommendation is give them the nod. Let's communicate to TDEC, to the state, that we're moving forward. As they're putting 1A into motion, then we can be mapping 1B.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, good. So I have a motion, do I have a second?
I'll second it. What was your motion? Just
The
to
motion to go
forward
ahead
with
and move
1A.
forward with phase 1A.
Okay.
So that's the sign the end of the money thing and go on with phase one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Do we have to, a roll call or what?
I will do a roll call on that. Do
Okay.
we have any other discussion on it before I do? Okay. And to be clear, this is a motion to cover both.
Yes.
State revolving loan and 1A. Okay. Alderman Mindy Fleischauer,
Yes.
Alderman John Gibson,
Yes.
Alderman Jim Gillum,
Yep.
Alderman Stephen McLean,
Yes.
Alderman Darby Patrick,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Teresa Ma,
Yes.
Mayor Pat Stillwell.
Yes.
Thank you, Board.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
No, thank you.
Okay, the next is, the discussion and the consideration of a park committee recommendation, and I have Mr. Gary Tapp-Traylor, that is the chairman here. Would you like to speak on that, Mr. Taylor-Traylor?
Actually, yeah, briefly, sorry, I wasn't prepared to make any kind of statement, but.
I like to put you on the spot.
Yeah, no problem.
Just try.
The committee met and we came up with what we feel are some very easy to accomplish recommendations to present to the board. Our park is, such a wonderful resource to the community members and the youth in our community, and as well as coming up with ways to improve the facilities. So we came up with 7 recommendations, and hopefully you would all have a copy of those recommendations in your packets with you tonight. But we came up with 7 recommendations that we feel can be easily accomplished in calendar year 2021. And so we just respectfully ask that you all consider and hopefully agree that those would be very easily to accomplish.
I think we're great. These are things that's been needed.
And it is going to improve our park. And
Absolutely.
We've got some discussion to do on the park, except, like maybe moving the playground all in one area. So people have said we can't keep up with our children. One's here and one's here in the park, or one's here and here. A lady told me that the other day. She has 4 children, and she said there's everywhere in the park. So she said to keep up with my kids, I've got, and so that makes sense. And then a special needs swing that we need desperately, and so.
If I could add one thing to that conversation.
Okay.
I think that kind of the approach that we're taking to the sewer needs to be the same thing that we do with the park. Kind of how we discuss doing phases, things in that nature.
Right.
Before we look at just, making changes altogether, like let's put a legitimate, long-term roadmap plan together so that we don't incur expenses that we shouldn't, or things of that nature, where we regret that we did this, or we could do this. Let's have an actual plan before we start making, just arbitrary changes. And that way we can maximize the space and, you know, maximize what we can offer at that park.
Right, and we need to have a meeting on that soon, very soon. So if you'll get downstairs with Emily and set something
Waiting
on
on
the
the
calendar.
lights up there, we've just got 8 lights that's burning now.
Is that what it is?
That's on that
It's
list
on
to try to
the
get
list of-
something done too. Go down. Okay.
I make the motion that we accept that, accept those recommendations and authorize those to be, you know,
And I say.
process.
All in favor, say aye. Okay, now, the next one is the, discussion and consideration resolution 1607, a resolution authorizing the mayor upon the consultation and retained council to approve any terms or agreements in the resolve of the town's interest of the opiate litigation and, execute the documents necessary for the proper and propose this resolution.
So I'll take this one away. So, and I'll be very candid. Half the time when you hear about these opioid cases, and I'm sure y'all have seen them in the news, it's hard to even know what they're talking about because there's 3,000 of them. There's over 3,000 of them going right now. The one that we are involved in is potentially getting to a settlement point. They reached out, was it last week or the week before? 2 weeks ago, and they said, hey, we need your mayor to authorize this, like that this pot of money is acceptable. There's like a big, huge sum for like every case. And I called them and I said, hey, no way that's gonna, they said we have to know by next Tuesday at noon. And I said, well, that's not gonna happen. It was like Thursday afternoon when I heard from them. I was like, I called them and I said, we can't do that. I said, first off, the resolution we entered into with you for the representation agreement didn't give the mayor the authority to speak for the board. So, she couldn't do that even if we had time. I was like, so we would have to get the board together and have a meeting. Well, as it seems that things are going to continue to occur quickly, rapidly, they have provided us with a resolution that would authorize the mayor to opt into whatever settlement occurs. I mean, it's going to be a take it or leave it regardless, but we're going to have to be able to take it in time. So, we still don't know what the dollars and cents look like, but as I see it, anything that we get is a windfall. I mean, we've not done any work for it. It will be good for the citizens to hopefully fund programs that can help with these opioid issues that the community faces. But it's not like we have negotiating power in this. So I would request that the board approve this resolution that would authorize the mayor to execute whatever settlement agreement they put in front of us, or to agree to the settlement if necessary. Because it's not going to be feasible to get the board together on the timelines that they've given us in the past. And with the way these things are moving as well, I think it's probably smart that if they do say, here's the money, that it's taken quickly, because it could go away quickly also.
If there is a settlement, where's the money go? General fund, or where's it go?
The board would have to decide. That would be my recommendation, because it would just kind of be paid to the town. It's not going to be earmarked or anything. So, I mean, as I understand, there's going to be certain programs and funds and things like that set up as well. But I don't think they're appropriating any of the money that the town would get to do those things. So, we could establish what we want to do with it, essentially.
I'll make the motion, go ahead and get it.
I'll second that.
Okay, so we got a motion to pass this resolution. We have a second. And I guess we'll just do all in favor.
All in favor?
Any opposed? All right, wonderful.
Okay, and then the authorization of the payment in the settlement of Steve McLean versus the town of Mount Carmel lawsuit.
Okay, so I'll just handle this as well. Case is settled.
I'm going to excuse myself because I'm a little bit involved.
You're fine.
Just a
Hey, you
little
don't. Hey, you don't have to go. You don't have to go
I'm not
anywhere.
leaving. I'm talking about from discussion
yeah.
or anything like that.
Right on.
I'll still be here.
So the case is settled, and we discussed that it possibly would during executive session recently. And now what the town needs to do, because the amount, lost wages were a portion, they were a measure of damages that was sued for. So the town has to cut that check as we stated, and then it will be reimbursed but for our deductible, $2,500 deductible. That figure has not been agreed upon yet, like what portion of the damages will be paid in lost wages. So I've discussed it with Chris, and what we would ask the board to do is vote to authorize a payment of up to $12,000 in lost wages. And we think that that will encompass whatever amount is ultimately agreed upon. That'll be above it or equal to it. But that way, the town has the authority, once we get that agreement in place, to write the check and take tax out and whatnot and pay it. So that my request would be that we have a motion and a vote to authorize the town to pay up to $12,000 in lost wages as a part of the settlement.
What about the other part?
Well, the other part is paid anyway. We don't pay the other part.
So what's the total amount?
The total settlement was $23,000. That's what was agreed upon.
I'd just like to make a motion that be paid $25,000 plus all into expenses.
It's not going to happen.
Yeah.
The insurance
Sorry.
company's not going to do it.
Insurance.
It's already done. It's already been agreed upon. So the settlement amount has been.
No. It has not been agreed upon.
Is that correct, Mr. Boyd?
Apparently that already knows.
I have not agreed to anything.
We need to speak with my client about that, then.
Thank you, Manny. And we will recess.
But as far as the wages, go, I mean, that's a pretty simple, easy way to determine what that would be.
Let's recess.
That is it.
And McLean said, no, it's not settled. And then McLean's lawyer said, I want to speak to my client.
I don't think they should.
He probably thought it was all settled too. I don't know.
Okay, if you were watching at home, I'm gonna go ahead and sign off, and I'll sign back on when they come back.